The Grateful Dead had one top 40 hit, just one. It reached the Billboard Hot 100 in 1987, topping out at number 9. The Grateful Dead never had a number one song on that chart, not once, in 30 years of touring. And this is also a band whose live shows across the original lineup and every act that followed it have generated more than $1.27 billion in reported ticket sales. That's the contradiction most people stop at. I want to go past it. Because the real question here isn't how the Grateful Dead made that money, it's what's left. Jerry Garcia has been gone for 31 years. Phil Lesh died in October 2024. Bob Weir died 7 months ago. The people who built this thing are almost all gone now, and the thing they built is still running. So here's what actually happened. Most touring acts sell the same show twice. A fan who saw a band last year gets close to the same set list, the same solos, and the same routine. The Grateful Dead didn't work that way. The band was known for rarely repeating a set list. A song might run 10 minutes longer on a Tuesday than it did on a Friday. A transition that worked one night might never ever happen again. Researchers who later studied the fan base coined a term for the hardest core of this audience: tour heads. People who followed the band from city to city and personally logged 70 shows or more. That number matters because what it means economically. A ticket to a Grateful Dead show wasn't a ticket to a fixed product. It was a ticket to a variable one. And a variable product gives a customer an actual reason to buy it again. This is where the business starts, before there's a business at all. None of this started with the band's office. It started with the fans. Before there was a formal mailing list, before there was a ticket operation, Deadheads were already doing the work themselves. They traded cassette tapes of shows by mail, dubbing recordings onto TDK and Maxwell tapes, and shipped them across the country. They traveled together from city to city, sharing tour dates and ride shares. They decorated envelopes just for the ritual of it, long before anyone at the band's office asked them to. A parking lot economy formed outside almost every venue. Fans called it Shakedown Street after the band's own album, and it sold food, art, and merchandise nobody at Grateful Dead Productions had approved. That distinction matters. The Grateful Dead didn't build a community as a marketing strategy. A community built itself around the band, mostly without the band's involvement. And the organization spent the next 2 decades figuring out how much of it to formalize, support, or fold into the business. That question, how much do you control, becomes the second half of this story. By the 1990s, the Grateful Dead wasn't 5 or 6 musicians and a road crew. It was a company. Grateful Dead Productions employed more than 70 people full-time at its peak. Merchandising alone had 22 employees, running a customer database of about 140,000 names, roughly half of them active paying customers. Road crews stayed on salary even during the months the band wasn't touring, with health benefits and profit sharing built in. Most fans standing in a stadium parking lot weren't thinking about any of this. They saw a band. What they didn't see was the office, the payroll, the legal department protecting the band's rights, all of it running year-round whether or not there was a show that week. This is the part of the story that rarely makes the mythology. The Grateful Dead weren't just a counterculture act that happened to get big. All of it was already running years before most casual fans had even heard their name. In 1983, the band set up Grateful Dead ticket sales, a mail-order operation that let fans buy tickets directly with no box office and no scalper standing in between them. Here's how it actually worked. You mailed in a money order, never a personal check, never cash, sealed inside a number 10 envelope along with a 3x5 index card listing which shows you wanted. Inside that, you included a second, smaller envelope, self-addressed and stamped for your tickets to travel home in. Fans became obsessive about decorating that outer envelope, using glitter, hand-drawn art, elaborate schemes to catch a staffer's eye, and maybe land better seats. But the return envelope, the one your actual tickets would come back in, they were told to leave plain. A decorated return envelope was an invitation for theft while it was in the mail. At its peak, a single tour could pull in tens of thousands of these envelopes, hand-processed by a staff working out of a post office box in Marin County. Nobody at the time called this direct-to-consumer. It was paper, stamps, and money order. but it did exactly what a modern direct sales operation does. It let the band talk straight to its own audience. There's a comfortable version of this story where the Dead let tapers record from day one. Free and easy, no friction. But that's not true. In the early 70s, the band actively tried to stop people from recording shows. Security confiscated equipment. The formal taper section, with reserve space and no more fighting of security, didn't exist until 1984. What changed wasn't a marketing plan. Phil said years later that the decision wasn't made as a ploy at all. Mickey Hart put it more simply. The band didn't want the job of policing its own fans. What that decision created over 30 years was an archive of more than 17,000 recordings that would eventually find a permanent home on the Internet Archive, freely accessible to anyone. The band didn't plan for that either, but the cassette trading culture they chose not to suppress became one of the most significant collections of live music documentation in existence anywhere. Merchandise flowed the same arc. Unofficial vendors were already selling shirts and stickers around Shakedown Street, and the organization estimated it was losing more than $250,000 a night to product it didn't control. Instead of shutting all of it down, the band brought some of those vendors into an official licensing system. Greg Burbank started out selling tie-dyed shirts in a parking lot. He ended up running Liquid Blue, a licensed Grateful Dead merchandise company. Over and over, the pattern repeats. Something starts as fan behavior nobody planned for. The organization eventually decides how much of it to keep and how much to own. In 1987, Touch of Grey became the song everyone associates with the Grateful Dead becoming mainstream. It peaked at number 9 on the Hot 100. It never reached number 1 there, though it did top Billboard's mainstream rock chart that same year. Just not the chart most people mean when they say number 1 hit. Here's the part that surprises some. 2 years before Touch of Grey existed, contemporary reporting had already put concert revenue at more than $20 million. The band's fan hotline was fielding 6,000 calls a day. A mailing list had grown past 150,000 names. Ticket counterfeiting had gotten so bad the FBI got involved. So, flip the story most people tell. The Grateful Dead didn't get a hit and then become a business. They were already a business running at a serious scale, and then, almost as an afterthought, they finally got a hit. Success didn't just grow the business, it changed what the business needed to survive. That same headcount now depended on a paycheck that only existed if the band kept touring. Road crew, ticketing staff, office workers, all of it running on overhead that could top $750,000 a month once the band was playing stadiums. As ticketing consolidated across the industry, Grateful Dead ticket sales found itself defending its own direct allocation system against Ticketmaster, a much larger, more powerful intermediary. The band kept a real share of tickets flowing through its own operation, but it took a fight to hold that ground. And somewhere in all of this, stopping stopped being simple. Mickey put it plain years later. We had a payroll and families, he said. We couldn't stop. We were a snake eating its tail. There was no way for us to take a rest. We were locked into tour, tour, tour. That's not a band chasing more money. That's an organization that had grown large enough to need its own continued existence. On August 9th, 1995, Jerry died. He was 53 years old. The original band never played another show under that name. For 30 years, everything we've just spent several minutes describing, the touring, the mailing list, the ticket operation, the merchandise, existed because 6 musicians got on a stage together. Now the center of that was gone. If you had to bet on what happened next, the obvious answer is it ends. The employees, they go home. The ticket office closes. The mailing list becomes a keepsake instead of a business tool. That's not what happened. The band's name retired. The machine didn't. Surviving members regrouped under different names across the next 3 decades. The other ones, further, Dead & Company. In 2015, the original surviving members came together for Fare Thee Well, billed as the band's 50th anniversary and final performances. Those 5 shows included 3 nights at Soldier Field in Chicago, grossed more than $52 million, and sold out in minutes, 2 decades after Jerry's death. Billboard's own accounting put the combined gross of the later projects all featuring founding members at more than $969 million. Add that to what the original band generated, and the total reported box office across every era clears $1.27 billion. Dead and Company alone, the largest of these successor acts, grossed more in nominal reported ticket sales than Billboard ever recorded for the original band. Over its 8-year run, the group played 235 shows to more than 4 million fans, more than any other post-Garcia touring project, and set all-time attendance records at stadiums like Wrigley Field and Fenway Park. That group added guitarist John Mayer to the core of Bobby, Mickey, and Bill Kreutzmann. In 2024 and 2025, that lineup filled Las Vegas's Sphere for extended residencies, a venue whose interior screens wrap completely around and over the audience. That idea isn't new. Creating that kind of an immersive, psychedelic atmosphere goes back to the acid tests in the mid-1960s, before the band even had its name. The technology, it had just finally caught up. In August 2025, Dead and Company played 3 nights at Golden Gate Park for the band's 60th anniversary. 60,000 people showed up each night. 5 months after that, on January 10th, 2026, Bobby died. He was 78. Phil had died a year and a half before him in October 2024. As of right now, only Mickey and Kreutzmann remain from the group of musicians who carried this forward after Jerry. 2 people out of everyone who built this. And the merchandise, the licensing, the archive, all of it is still running. Let's be precise about that 1.27 billion number, because it gets misused constantly. That figure is box office gross. It's what ticket buyers paid at the door, added up across every tour and every era. It's not profit. It's not what the band took home, and it's definitely not sitting in some Grateful Dead bank account. Out of every dollar in that total, you have to subtract venue costs, crew, transportation, production, insurance, management commissions, and taxes. Grateful Dead also carries something most bands didn't: a large permanent staff on salary, whether or not anyone was touring that month. Nobody, not Billboard, not the band's own former accountants, has ever published a reliable number for what all of that actually netted out over the 60 years across every entity. So here's the honest version. We know how much money moved. We don't know how much stuck. So what actually survived? Not the money. We just spent the last few minutes proving that number is messier than that headline suggests. And nobody alive can tell you what it actually netted out to. Not a master plan either. The people who were actually there, when asked directly, tended to say the same thing. Most of this wasn't designed. Nobody set out to build a mail-order ticket empire. It was a band trying to keep some control over its own show, one decision at a time, for 30 years. What survived is the stuff that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. The songs built to be played differently every night. The habit of getting in a car and following a tour. The mailing list culture, the decorated envelopes, the people who still call themselves heads. An archive of thousands of recordings shows that outlived the men who played in them. Of the people who actually built this, almost nobody's left. There's no tour on the calendar right now, unfortunately, and nobody inside the organization will tell you what's going to happen next. And that's fine, believe it or not, because it doesn't change what already survived. The songs are still built to be played differently whenever somebody plays them next. The archive is still there, whether or not anyone's going to tour this year.